Hi, everyone. My name is Michele Exner, and I'm the Senior Advisor at Parents Defending Education. As parents, staying updated on what's happening on Capitol Hill and getting to know the members of Congress working on education issues can be a bit of a challenge. Not to mention that we can't count on mainstream media to deliver the objective perspectives that parents deserve to have. To help parents get an inside look at their government, PDE launched the discussion series to help highlight the parents and parent advocates serving in Congress. It is an honor and privilege to introduce you to the chair of the House Committee on Education and the Workforce, Chairwoman Virginia Foxx.
Hi, Michele.
Hi, Congresswoman. Congressman Foxx is a member of the U.S. House of Representatives, representing North Carolina's 5th District, which covers the central western portion of North Carolina from the Appalachian Mountains to the western suburbs of the Piedmont Triad. Rep. Foxx has served in Congress since 2005, and more importantly, Congresswoman Foxx is a mother and also a grandmother. Congresswoman Foxx, thank you so much for joining us and being our guest today.
Thank you for having me, Michele.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, considering everything going on, we are just absolutely humbled. You spared a couple minutes to update our parents.
No, it's my opportunity to do that.
Perfect. All right. Well, I'm going to kick it off with some questions then. All right. So one thing when I was doing a little reading for this that I did not know was that you grew up in New York and then you moved to North Carolina. And you grew up in a household that didn't have electricity or running water. And I think that's a critical part of your childhood. And I think, we'd all love to know how that has shaped your approach serving in Congress.
Well, we're all shaped by our experiences. You're right. I was 6.5 years old when my family left New York and moved to the mountains of North Carolina. And I lived in a really isolated area. We didn't have electricity. We didn't have running water until I was 14 years old. But my mother, who had a 6th grade education, my father a 9th grade education, always wanted me to do well in school. I have very poor eyesight. I was never involved in sports. So I turned to reading, and I loved reading and I love learning. And so I was very much involved in academics. And I always knew that a good education and hard work, you need the two, Michele, together, not just one or the other, but the two together. I always knew that was a ticket out of poverty. My husband grew up in a very similar situation, even worse than I had, and he had the same feeling. So we both worked our way through college. It took me 7 years because I worked full-time, went to school part-time, was married, had a family, but eventually got my degree, wanted to teach high school English, but wound up teaching college sociology. But I love learning. I love education. I want to help other people have the same, not the same experience I had, but hopefully the same outcome that I had. And that is you get a good education, you work hard, and you're able to be successful in this country.
Absolutely. What an inspirational story. So thank you so much for sharing that. And also, I think many people might not know this, but even before you stepped foot on Capitol Hill, you had dedicated your career to working on education. You served for 12 years on a school board in North Carolina. You were a teacher and president of college. And for 20 years, you served in Congress. You've served on this committee, right? Which says a lot. And twice as chairwoman, you even had to seek a waiver to go back. And that says a lot about how much you value education, how important you think it is. And so tell us, why do you think this is so consequential?
Well, as I said, I think having good education, you don't necessarily need a degree. In my case, I needed degrees because I wanted to teach, I wanted to remain in the education establishment. So I needed degrees for that. But before I actually came to Congress, John Boehner asked me to serve on the committee, and I'm very glad that he asked me to do that. It's difficult, as you know from your background, sometimes to get on certain committees, but when he asked me to serve on the committee, I decided I would do that because of my background. He knew my background. I'm really the only person in the Congress who has a strong background in education. So I came on the committee and I worked my way up to the chairwomanship. I was chair for 2 years. Then we went into the minority, and I was the ranking member. And Republicans have a rule that you can only be ranking member or chair for 6 years. But I appealed to the steering committee, which makes the decisions on what committee you stay on. And the committee chose me to be chair again these 2 years. And I think that's important to have somebody with the experience that I have to be serving as chair, because we have faced a lot in the 16, 18 months that I have been chair. We have been working on reform, particularly of post-secondary education. It's been over 10 years since we have done anything on reforming post-secondary education, and a lot has happened. So that's been one of our focuses. With all the campus unrest that's going on right now, of course, that's taken a lot of attention. But we've also looked at K-12, and we'll be looking more at that. So our plate has been full, and we have two sides. We have the workforce side too, and we're working on both of those to show how education is integrated into preparing people for the workforce.
Absolutely. And I also think during your tenure, it should go without saying that you were one of the strongest advocates for school reopening, right? Back in 2020, when a lot of parents were sitting at home feeling helpless, right? Our kids, their education was completely abandoned. And I think a lot of us were so grateful to have a strong voice and leader like you in Congress.
Yes, the unions kept the schools closed down way too long. In fact, they should never been closed down. We knew from what was going on in Europe that the schools were not the places where COVID was being spread. The students were not getting it. There were practically no negative repercussions for the schools that stayed open. And so it was a real mistake. These kids will never recover from the loss of learning that occurred during COVID.
Absolutely. And the most heartbreaking part is, like you well know, like the American dream lies in that education. But I know with you at the helm, we'll at least try to steer it back in the right direction here. All right, so I want to transition to two big topics that are top of mind. First, and you alluded to it, is want to talk about the insanity we're seeing on college campuses. I think a lot of parents, right, and just normal Americans, Democrats included, are probably looking at what's happening and asking, how did we get here? And you probably know, but we'll get there in a little bit. And I know your committee has done a lot of work to bring accountability to the failure of leadership we've seen at these universities when it comes to the anti-Semitism and hate that we've seen unravel. And I just want to highlight a quote here. So during the December 5th hearing where you brought in presidents of Harvard, MIT, and UPenn, you said in part, for years, universities have stoked the flames of an ideology which goes by many names: anti-racism, anti-colonialism, critical race theory, DEI, and the list goes on. And now it is clear that Jews are at the bottom of the totem pole and without protection under this critical theory framework. So with that, I wanted to ask you if you could elaborate a little bit on these elements, right? DEI, CRT, and how you think they have fueled what we're seeing now manifest on campuses, and including K-12 schools.
Well, it's really unfortunate that our universities have deviated so much from what they are designed to be, which is places to look for truth, to gain knowledge, and to help students gain the skills they need to be successful in life. And what's happened is that you have the remnants of the 60s controlling the campuses these days. You have people who rioted in the 1960s who wanted equity. That's the term they use all the time, equity. They want, and as you said, diversity, inclusion. They have this idea that the government or the institutions can create something that will happen in this country organically if we leave people alone. We are a country founded on freedom. These people want to control what happens. And that is not needed. If we just leave the universities as bastions of truth, seeking knowledge, the things that need to happen will happen again organically. They have happened in the past. What they want to do is indoctrinate people with their ideology. And you can see from what's happening right now that that's not working. If I tell people, go read Animal Farm, go read 1984. Christopher Rufo's just come out with a book on America's Cultural Revolution. Those things, Animal Farm in particular, which is very short to read, I think does this in a nutshell. You get a small group of people who think they have the answers to everything and they're going to control it. That's not what this country is about. We don't need these DEI regimes on these campuses deciding which box is each person going to fill. So we need to just leave things alone on our campuses, but be faced with moral clarity. That I have called for too. We know the difference between right and wrong. You know, I spoke to these campus presidents before we had these hearings, and in each case I said to them, you know the difference between right and wrong, and actions have consequences. Do what's the right thing to do, and everything will come out in the long run, even in the short run. And if you look at what's happened on Columbia's campus, they tried to negotiate with terrorists. You cannot do that. And these students basically are terrorists in the sense that they make demands that are unreasonable.
They should have at least packed their own lunch, right? I think there was one yesterday.
Exactly. But no, they called for pizza to be delivered to the second floor. It's crazy.
All right, at least pack a peanut butter jelly sandwich or something. That was pretty funny. Glad NYPD figured that out yesterday.
Yes.
So want to ask you a quick follow-up there because PD focuses on K to 12.
Sure.
So are you noticing that these seeds of hate are being planted much earlier than freshman year of college?
Correct. And we will have a hearing on this, on K-12, on anti-Semitism in K-12 next week in the committee, because we know that this is happening. We hear it from people, social emotional learning. There are lots of names that it goes under, but we want to ferret it out in the schools. And we're very pleased about Parents Defending Education alerting parents to these issues and having parents be involved in their children's education. That's always been the key. Look, I can remember 30 years ago watching TV early in the morning, as I usually do while I'm doing other things. I happened to be walking on my treadmill at the time, and there was an article on TV that said, the effective schools are the ones with a good principal and parental involvement. They did a 60-year study. This was 30 years ago. So we've known for over 100 years that the most effective schools have a good principal, parental involvement. And that's what you need. It is not rocket science. Come on, that's what we need. And anybody who knows that, we need parents involved. We need parents monitoring their education. We need parents helping their children in the evening with their homework. We need them to know what's going on. We need them to look at the material they're bringing home. And what happened during COVID, Michele, was that parents became much more educated about what was happening in the schools. And that has changed a lot about what's happened in education. We've seen a rise of homeschooling. We've seen a rise of children going to private schools, Christian schools, parochial schools, all kinds of alternatives. And that's important because it has exposed a lot of what's wrong with the public schools.
Absolutely. There's one silver lining, and that's certainly the parental awakening that we saw happen. All right, so I'm going to close with another very important topic, top of mind for parents. So Title IX updates that President Biden admins just released. We all agree, and again, most of our parents, I believe the majority of Americans as well, that with this rewrite, the president has essentially wiped away 50 plus years of civil rights and Supreme Court precedent, right? And on Biden's Title IX, you said the decades of advancement protections for women and girls that it has yielded are squarely on the chopping block. Parents understandably have questions, right? Particularly parents of young daughters like mine who play sports and are worried about how this will affect them in school. So, a couple quick questions. What's being done at the federal level? What advice do you have for concerned parents? And what can they do at their level to impact change, push for change?
Well, as you said, President Biden's administration is trying to undo the good that Title IX has done. And you're right, we just celebrated the 50th anniversary of Title IX a couple of years ago. We felt very good about that. Under Secretary DeVos, she worked hard, like 3 years, to update Title IX regulations and bring them in line with what they needed to be. They had not been updated for a long time. She did a fabulous job on it, and it took a long time. Now what the Biden administration is trying to do is undo those, take away the rights of female students. You know, I got made fun of in the Rules Committee when I said, I don't know what a transgender woman is. And I explained that later after I got laughed at, because you cannot change one's genes. It's impossible to do. And it is wrong for the Biden administration to say that biological males are going to have the right to compete against biological females. We are different people. Our bodies are different. It's wrong to do that. So we need to right this issue. There are going to be lawsuits against these rules that the Biden administration is promulgating. We, of course, are pushing back against them. We've passed a bill in the committee protecting women and girls in sports, saying, no, it's wrong to put biological males in competition with girls and women. And so we don't want that to happen. So it's going to be a bit of a fight. I don't think it's going to be easy, but there are people out there willing to take on the fight. And I think we ultimately will win in this fight. And it's wrong. What's so crazy about this, Michele, is that 50 years ago, it was Democrats leading the fight. I think Republicans came along, but it really was Democrats leading the fight for women's equality. I believe in women's equality. Men and women are not the same, but under the law, we should be treated the same. And that's what people want in this country, is for girls and women, boys and men to be treated the same under the law and in terms of resources. And the Biden administration now saying we're going to wipe out women basically and let these, I call them fake girls. I think that's a term. I just now thought about that. We should start calling them fake girls, fake women, to come in and compete. And it's wrong because our body structures are different and they have an advantage we just don't have.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for your leadership there. It's facts, right? They're not changing. PD is proud that we're leading one of those lawsuits and we're in the fight right alongside you. So with that, we're going to wrap up. We're a little bit out of time. So gracious for all of the time you spent with us. And we're excited. I think so far I was looking. So you've brought in leaders from Harvard, UPenn, MIT, Columbia. Just announced Yale, UCLA, Michigan. We've got K-12, Montgomery, New York City, Berkeley. And, I think I can speak on behalf of all parents. We're excited to see that list to continue to grow, to bring the accountability that students and families deserve to have. So thank you.
Thanks, Michelle. You know, the speaker said to me the other day after a press conference, who knew the Education Committee was going to be in such a spotlight? But we've been out there year after year, day after day, plowing the ground, getting ready to plant seeds. Now we're planting seeds and we're doing our job, and we're happy because there's nothing more important than getting education right.
Absolutely. And so to our parents, if you want to follow what Chairman Foxx is doing, please follow their account, either at House Ed or her personal account on X, on Facebook, and then also on fox.house.gov. And as always, be aware of what your children are being exposed to, ask questions. If you find something concerning happening at your school, please reach out to us. PD is there to help. And we have great allies like Chairwoman Foxx on Capitol Hill to help us as well. Thank you, Congresswoman Foxx. See you next time, everyone.
Thanks, Michelle.